Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to host a virtual private server or VPS on an Ubuntu operating system with LXQT desktop environment on Amazon Web Services or AWS. That was a mouthful. The two services we're going to be utilizing today are Amazon EC2, which is Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, and Amazon VPC, also known as Amazon Virtual Private Cloud. Now, before we sign up for these two services on Amazon Web Services, we're going to need to download a couple of programs. I have these programs that we're going to download on my desktop and currently installed on my laptop. So it's these three highlighted programs here: PuTTY, PuTTYgen, and VNC Viewer. PuTTY and PuTTYgen will be downloaded together. PuTTY is what we'll use to connect to our virtual private server by SSH. PuTTYgen will generate our private key for our server. And VNC Viewer is to view LXQT desktop environment on our VPS. So let's get started by downloading these services. So I'm just going to open up my browser here. And the first service we're going to be downloading is PuTTY and PuTTYgen. You need to navigate to www.putty.org. Once you're here, you want to download PuTTY by clicking on here, the hyperlinked text. Left click on it. This is going to then take you to download PuTTY's latest release area, and we're going to be looking at package files, and I'm on Windows, so therefore I'll be downloading the MSI Windows installer, and I'm on 64-bit Windows, so that's the one I'm going to be downloading. If you're on Linux or another operating system, please click the appropriate version. So once you've found your version that you want, left click on it and it will start to download. Once it downloads, you want to click this arrow here and click open. And then you'll want to go through the motions here of installing PuTTY and PuTTYgen. And of course I already have PuTTY and PuTTYgen installed, so I'm not going to be clicking next. You'll be clicking next if you don't have PuTTY and PuTTYgen. I'm going to be clicking cancel. I'm going to hit yes and then hit finish. Okay, so now you've got your PuTTY and PuTTYgen. We're going to be downloading now VNC Viewer. So I have another tab here for VNC Viewer. You're going to navigate to www.realvnc.com/en/connect/download/viewer. And once you're here, you can see that there's numerous versions of VNC Viewer that you can download. You've got Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Raspberry Pi, iOS, Android, Chrome, etc. Now, of course, I'm on Windows once again, and I'm on 64-bit Windows, so I'm going to leave it as it is, and then I'm just going to hit download VNC Viewer. Okay, once VNC Viewer downloads, you want to click the arrow, exactly the same what you did with PuTTY. Left click on it and then click open. This will bring up the installer. Select your language that you want, so mine is English, and press OK. And then once again, go through the motions of installing the VNC Viewer. I've already got it installed, so I'm not going to hit next again. I'm going to hit cancel, and then I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to hit finish. Alright, great guys. So we've got PuTTY, PuTTYgen, and VNC Viewer. We can now move on to signing up to Amazon Web Services and utilizing Amazon EC2 and Amazon VPC. So I'm just going to navigate to this tab here that I have open, and you're going to navigate to www.aws.amazon.com. Okay, so once you're here, you want to click on the sign into the console button here. It's orange, it's on the top right hand side. Left click on it, and then it should take you to the sign-in page. If you don't have an AWS account, you'll want to click create a new AWS account here, the grey button. This will then take you to the create an AWS account where you put in an email, choose a password, and choose an AWS account name. And you will also get an email in your email address where you'll need to verify your sign up. Alright guys, so I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to sign in. So once you've created your account, you're going to be on this page as well. And you're just going to select root user here, and then you're going to put in your email address and then click next. On this page, you'll put in your password for your AWS account, and then you're going to click the big blue button here, sign in. Left click on it. You'll now be brought to the Amazon Web Service Management Console. Once we're here, we can start creating our VPS. So the first service we're going to be utilizing on AWS Management Console is Amazon VPC. So the first thing you're going to do is navigate to the top here and left click on the arrow next to services. Once you're here, you should get a big list of services. You're going to scroll down, all the way down to where it says networking and content delivery. And as you can see, here is Amazon VPC. You're going to left click on it. And this will take you to the VPC dashboard. Once you're on the dashboard, you want to click this big orange button here at the top to launch VPC Wizard. So left click on it. And now we will be brought to an area where we can configure our virtual private cloud. So you're just going to click select. We're going to keep all these settings default and we're going to add a VPC name. I'm going to call it VPS LXQT. So once you've chosen a VPC name, you're going to keep everything as it is, as default. For availability zone, you can leave it as no preference, or you can choose a region. No preference will put it at the server closest to you. So I'm in Ireland, and therefore it will be an Irish virtual private server. Great, guys. So you're just going to go all the way down to the bottom right here, and you're going to left click, create VPC, the big blue button here. Once that's done, it will start creating your VPC. And you'll get this message that says VPC successfully created. You can launch instances into the subnets of your VPC. Great, guys. So you're just going to hit this big blue button here that says OK. Left click on it. And there we go, guys. As easy as that, we've launched a VPC. And now we need to link this VPC to another service, and that service is going to be Amazon EC2. So again, what you'll need to do is navigate to the top here, and you want to click on the arrow next to services, and then you want to go to where it says compute, and you'll want to choose the EC2 service. Left click on it. You'll then be brought to the EC2 dashboard. You'll now need to navigate down a bit to where it says launch instance. This big orange button here, you want to left click on it, and then click Launch Instance. Once you're here, you'll be greeted with a big list of operating systems or Amazon machine images. Actually, you'll have around 40 AMIs to choose from. As you can see here, the first one is Amazon Linux, which is a free tier, another Linux operating system, Ubuntu, Amazon RDS, Microsoft Windows Server 2019 base, and a whole bunch of other servers. I'm not going to go through all this list here, but what we can do, I'm going to be utilizing the free tiers only. So I'm just going to left click on it here. And then, of course, we're going to be choosing an Ubuntu server. So I'm just going to scroll down a bit. And there we go. We're going to be going with Ubuntu server 18.04 LTS. We're going to be going with a 64-bit server. You're just going to hit the big blue button here, select to select the Ubuntu server. We'll then have further customization, such as to pick the amount of CPUs you want for your server, the memory, the instance storage type, and the network performance. As you can see, by default it has the free tier selected, and that's the one we're going to utilize. We get 1 CPU and 1 GB of memory, which is plenty to run a VPS server with an LXQT desktop environment. LXQT is a very light Linux operating system on Ubuntu. Great, so once you've picked your VPS's specs, I also forgot to mention that 1 CPU is actually 2.5 GHz Intel Xeon CPU. So yeah, once you've chosen your system specs, all you need to do is navigate to the bottom right here where it says Next Configure Instance Details. You're going to left click on this button here and you'll be greeted with the Configure Instance Details section. I'm only launching 1 instance, so the number of instances is going to be 1. Your network is going to be the VPC you created previously. It should auto-populate. If it hasn't, you can just select it from the drop-down menu. The subnet again will be part of the VPC that you set up previously, and keep everything pretty much as default. Hit review and launch. Once you've done that, you'll be brought to the review section to review your instance launch details. And as you can see, we have our free tier Ubuntu server with 2.5 GHz, 1 GB of RAM, grouped with our VPC service that we configured previous to this. Great, guys. So all you need to do is click the blue button to launch your server. Left click on it. You will then be greeted with this window here that says select an existing key pair or create a new key pair. We'll be creating a new key pair, and if you don't know what a key pair is, a key pair consists of a public key that AWS stores and a private key file that you store. We're not going to be choosing an existing key pair, so we're going to click this arrow here. We're going to be creating a new key pair. Since we don't currently have one, you're going to give your key pair a name. So I'm just going to go with LXQT VPS. Altogether, it's better to not have spaces. And then click the big grey button here, download key pair. Great, so once your key pair has downloaded, we can now launch our instance. I'll be showing you what to do with your key pair a bit later on. So just scroll a bit down here and you should see a big launch instance button. You're going to left click on this blue button here. And now you have just launched your EC2 instance. And as you can see, it says in green text here, your instances are now running. The following instance launches have been initiated, and it lists your instance ID. Great, so we've got our VPC created and we've got our EC2 instance running. There is one more service we need to utilize on EC2, and that is to add a public IP address. So what you're going to do is you're going to click the arrow next to services again, and you're going to go to EC2 once again, and this should take you to the EC2 dashboard. As you can see, we have running instances and it says we have one key pair and we have 2 security groups that were generated with that instance. Now what we need to do, as I said already, is add a public IP address, and to do that we'll need to select Elastic IPs. Left click on this. Once you've clicked on Elastic IP addresses, you'll be brought to this section here where we'll need to add an Elastic IP address to the EC2 service. So all you're going to do is click on Allocate Elastic IP Address, this big orange button here. You're going to left click on it and you'll be brought to this page. As you can see, it says Allocate an Elastic IP address by selecting the public IPv4 address pool from which the public IP address is to be allocated. So as you can see, we have the Amazon's pool of IPv4 addresses. You're going to keep that checked and then you're going to hit Allocate. And now you have a public IP address. And as you can see, it says it in this section here. Great, so all I'm going to do now is go back to the dashboard and then click on Running Instances. Great, and now you can see that you're on the EC2 dashboard and you can see our server instance state is running, which means our VPS is running. I'm just going to minimize our browser for a bit now as we won't be needing it for a little while. And I'm going to go back to our desktop here. Now we're going to be generating a private key with the key pair we downloaded while creating our EC2 instance. It's a .pem file. It should be in your downloads. The first program we're going to be opening is PuTTYgen, which came with PuTTY when we downloaded it previously. Double click on PuTTYgen and it should open up the PuTTY key generator. Here you're going to load in the key pair you downloaded previously. So you're just going to navigate down to where it says load here and you're going to left click on it. You will then be in your File Explorer where you'll navigate to your downloads. Make sure that the file type you're searching for is all files, as remember, the key pair is a .pem file. And there we go, it says LXQT VPS that we gave the name to, .pem. You're going to left click on this file and you're going to click Open. You'll then get this message from PuTTYgen, which is a notice, and it says successfully imported foreign key, open SSH, SSH2 private key. To use this key with PuTTY, you need to use the save private key command to save it in PuTTY's own format. And that's exactly what we're going to need to do, guys. We're going to hit OK, and then we're going to hit save a private key. Left click on it, and then you'll be greeted with the PuTTYgen warning. Are you sure you want to save this key without a passphrase to protect it? You're going to go yes. You can if you want, however, but I just find it easier not to. And then you're going to pick a location to save your private key. I'm going to go with the easiest place, which is my desktop here, and I'm going to give it a file name here, and it's going to be LXQT VPS private key, and hit save. You then should see it immediately appear on your desktop. I'm just going to close out PuTTYgen now as we won't need it anymore. So click the X, and here's the file that we've just generated here. Here's our private key. I'm just going to drag this private key here next to VNC Viewer, just so it's all aligned. And now with this private key generated, we can actually log into our Ubuntu virtual private server and start configuring it and installing a few programs such as LXQT. Great, so the first thing you're going to need to do is open up PuTTY. Double click on it, you'll then be greeted with the PuTTY configuration area. So in the host name, you'll need to put the IP address of your virtual private server, and you'll need to leave everything as default, so port 22 will be fine and SSH as the connection type. So again, for the IP address, to find this, you're going to need to go back to your browser here, and you'll need to find your elastic IP address, also known as your public IPv4 IP address. So to do this, you need to take this bar here on the left hand side, navigate all the way down to where it says Elastic IPs, and you just want to left click on this. Once you're here, you'll just want to copy the allocated IPv4 public address here, highlight it, and then right click, copy. Once you've got it copied, you can minimize your browser once again, and you'll be brought back to PuTTY configuration. Once you're here, you just want to right click and paste to paste in your host name or your IP address. Great, so we've got our host name now. Now before we log into our server, there's one more step we need to do, and that is to authenticate the private key that we generated through PuTTY. To do this, what you'll need to do is navigate down on the left hand side here, and through the categories, you want to navigate to where it says SSH, click this little plus symbol here, and it will expand your selection. Take this little bar here again, and navigate down to where it says Auth. Left click on Auth, and you don't need to expand it, you just left click on Auth, and now you'll be brought to the options controlling SSH authentication. What we're going to be looking at is private key file for authentication, and you're going to hit Browse. Once you've clicked Browse, you want to locate your private key, and we saved it on our desktop here. So I'm going to click the desktop, and you're going to find the LXQT VPS private key. Left click on it, and then click Open. Great, so now we've loaded our private key into the SSH authentication zone. I'm just going to take this bar again and go all the way to the top and click Session to be taken back to the basic options for your PuTTY session, and all we need to do now is click Open to connect to our VPS server. Left click, and we've got a PuTTY fatal error here. Network error, connection timed out. Guys, I realized my fault here, so just press OK here and then close out of this terminal. We need to go back to our browser here. We have forgotten to associate our allocated elastic IP address with our EC2 instance and our VPC instance. So to correct this, all you need to do is go back to your elastic IP addresses here, check mark the allocated IP address that you want, and then go to Actions here, click the arrow, and then click Associate Elastic IP Address. You'll then be brought to this section here that says Associate Elastic IP Address. The resource type, it's going to be an instance. So let me navigate down here a bit. So the instance you're looking for is going to be your EC2 instance. So it will just be the only instance available. If you've only launched one instance, left click on it. And your private IP address is going to be the VPC instance. So I'm just going to left click here and then select the private IP address. And then all you need to do to associate the elastic IP address with the instance and the private IP address is to click on the big orange button here, Associate. Once you're here, it will say Elastic IP address associated successfully. To check that it is associated, just navigate back to the top here and then click the EC2 dashboard. Once you're here, click Running Instances, and you should now see, which wasn't there before by the way, is that you have an IPv4 public address here, an elastic IP address which is the same, connected to your private IP address. Alright, great guys, so I'm just going to minimize back out of my browser here, and we're going to repeat the steps what we did before in PuTTY. So I'm just going to double click to open PuTTY again. I'm going to paste in our elastic IP address, maintain port 22, SSH. You're going to go to SSH here, and you're going to click on the plus symbol next to SSH to expand. You're going to go Auth, and then you're going to click Browse, and you're going to select the private key again, which in my case is LXQT VPS private key. Select it and then click Open, and once you've done that, navigate to the top here, back to Session, back to Basic Options for the PuTTY session, and then to connect to the VPS, all you need to do is click Open. And then you'll immediately get this PuTTY security alert, which says the server's host key is not cached in the registry. You have no guarantee that the server is the computer you think it is. And then it will give you the fingerprint for the SSH, etc., and asking you if you trust this connection. Of course, you know you're connecting to the right connection because you have put the information in, and all you need to do is click yes. You'll be greeted with one line of text in the terminal. Let me just center this terminal here real quick, which says login as. For Amazon Web Services is always dependent on the operating system you've installed. We've installed Ubuntu, and all we need to do to log in as root is type Ubuntu and then hit enter, and it will authenticate our private key that we imported into PuTTY. You will know you're logged in as root when it says Ubuntu at IP dash and then your private IP address, which is displayed in Amazon Web Services. Okay, so let's get started by configuring our VPS by typing in our first command. So the first thing I always recommend to do is to update your server. So go sudo apt-get space update and then hit enter, and your server will start updating. You'll know the command has finished when it says again Ubuntu at IP dash your private IP address once again. So the next command we're going to do is to install a VNC server so that we can view it on our VNC Viewer client. To do this, all you need to do is type sudo space apt-get install, and I'm going to go with PuTTYVNC server. PuTTYVNC server all together and then hit enter. And then it will ask you this time for a confirmation. Do you want to continue? Y for yes, N for no, and it's a 372 megabyte file. You're going to hit Y and then you're going to hit enter, and it will install PuTTYVNC server. Great, so that's installed, and now we can install our LXQT desktop environment. So to do this, all you need to do is type sudo again, space apt-get space install LXQT, and then all you need to do is hit enter again. Again, you'll be notified with this message, do you want to continue, yes or no, and it's a 1479 megabyte file, roughly about 1.5 gigabytes, and you're going to hit Y and hit enter to install. Great, so now our desktop environment has been installed, and now we can finally reboot our server just to keep everything nice and fresh. So I'm just going to close out of this command line here, and I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go back to the browser here and go back to Amazon Web Services. Make sure that you're in the instances section of your EC2 dashboard. I'm just going to make sure that you actually are in there by showing it to you again. So you're going to go EC2 dashboard, running instances, and you'll be brought back to here. Okay, once you're here, you'll want to select your EC2 instance. As you can see, it's already selected for me. Then you're going to click on Actions, the arrow next to it, and then go over to Instance State, and you're going to hit Reboot. It will then ask you, are you sure you want to reboot these instances? And you're going to hit Yes, Reboot, and this will reboot your server. I recommend waiting about a minute for it to reboot. While that's rebooting, we can minimize our browser again, and we can open up PuTTY again and paste back in our host name, which is our public IP address again, and then add our private key by going again to where it says SSH, clicking the plus symbol, and then going to Auth and go and browse and find our private key, and then click open to open it. Go back to the scroll bar here, navigate to the top, click session, and then click open. I'm just going to center the command line again and then log in once again by typing in Ubuntu and then hitting enter. Again, it will authenticate your key and you're logged back in. Great, so you're logged back into the server and have done a fresh reboot. Now what we need to do is start the PuTTYVNC server by typing in VNC server. So just type in VNC server and then hit enter. You'll be asked to provide a password for your VNC server. A VNC server just allows your VNC viewer to connect to it with the same password so that you can view your desktop environment on your Linux Ubuntu server. So just type in a password and then it'll ask you to verify that password. So I'm just going to type one in here and then hit enter and then verify it by typing in the same password again and then hit enter. It will then ask you, would you like to enter a view-only password? Yes or no? I'm going to hit no because I will not be having multiple people using this server. It's good to have a view-only password if you want to give people access to your VPS server and not be able to make any changes to your VPS server. However, I'm only going to be the one using this server, so I don't need a view-only password. So I'm going to hit N for no and then hit enter. You'll know if your VNC server is running when you see this message here that says new X desktop is IP and then your private IP address. Great guys, so we won't actually be needing this PuTTY terminal anymore as we have installed everything we need to install, we have updated everything we need to update, and we've configured our VNC server for our VNC Viewer client. Great, so all you need to do is click the big X here to close the terminal and then hit OK. And now we can move on to the final step, which is utilizing the VNC Viewer here. Double click on it to open it. And now you're going to need to add your VPS server to the VNC Viewer. To do this, all you need to do is navigate to the top left, click File, and then go New Connection. Once you're here, you want to paste in your public IP address again, or the IPv4 address from the Elastic IP addresses. It will of course be the same IP address you added as the host name in PuTTY, and you're going to add a little bit more. You're going to go colon and then 5901. The colon comes after your public IP address to tell the VNC Viewer what port you want to use, and we want to use port 5901. Great, so once you've set up your VNC server, you need to give it a name, so I'm going to go with LXQT space Ubuntu space AWS VPS, and then keep everything else as default and click OK. And now you've added your VPS to the VNC Viewer. Before we connect, only port 22 is open on our virtual private server, so we do need to open port 5901. To do this, go back to Amazon Web Services on your browser here, back to your EC2 instances, and what you need to do is make sure that you have your instance selected here, and then what you need to do is navigate down to where it says description here, and then navigate to the right hand side here, and navigate a bit down to where it says security groups. Once you're here, left click on Launch Wizard 1 in the security groups. You're going to be on the details section of your launch wizard, and you're going to be clicking on inbound rules. And just pull this bar a bit down here so you can see everything, and pull this up actually. It's better for viewing. As you can see, currently the inbound rules, we have a single inbound rule, and that is an SSH type. The protocol is TCP, and the port range is 22, and the source is 5 zeros. You're going to be added one more inbound rule, and you're going to click Edit Inbound Rules, and then you're going to click Add Rule. The type of inbound rule you're going to add is going to be a custom TCP from the drop-down list here. It's already selected for me, but you just want to search for it here, and for me it's at the top. And then you're going to enter a particular port. You're going to delete this 0 here, and the port that we want again is 5901. So you're just going to type 5901. You're going to keep the source as custom. If it's not on custom, it might not allow you to type this port range in, and you'll need to select custom. And then the source that you're going to select is the 5 zeros once again. So you're going to click this text box next to the magnifying glass, and you're going to choose the 5 zeros, which matches the SSH inbound rule above. Great, so once you've opened up port range 5901, you just want to scroll down here, and you want to go Save Rules. And then you'll get a message in green that says inbound security group rules successfully modified on security group and your security group's ID launch wizard 1. Great, so now you can just minimize out of this browser again. And now you shouldn't have any trouble logging in and viewing your virtual private server's desktop environment. So hover over the VNC server and then right click and click Connect. You'll then be greeted with this message that says unencrypted connection. The connection to this VNC server will not be encrypted. It will then give you a public IP address, colon 5901. Remember, we only added one colon in there, but however, it displays 2, that's fine. And then it says your authentication credentials will be transmitted securely, but all subsequent data exchanged while the connection is in progress may be susceptible to interception by third parties. That is just a typical message that you might receive. You can choose to don't warn me about this message again. However, I'm not going to checkmark this message that says don't warn me about this again on this computer, as I like to receive this message just for security reasons, and then click Continue. You will now need to enter your password that you set up for your VNC server. So I'm just going to enter it here. And then I am going to check mark remember password, and then all you need to do to connect is click OK. And there we go, guys. We have successfully connected to our virtual private server. Let me just maximize this window here to show you the simplicity of LXQT desktop environment. So as you can see, there is no shortcuts on the desktop. However, you can add your own shortcuts if you want. I'm just going to click the start menu here. You have accessories, graphics, internet, so Firefox, Office, sound video, system, preferences, about LXQT. You can leave, you can lock the screen. This is what's great about a virtual private server. It's exactly like having another computer that you can operate over SSH and VNC Viewer. So I'm just going to test out an app. I'm going to go to Internet and click on Firefox. And just to show you the speed, I'm going to go to www.google.com and hit enter. It's pretty fast, as you can see. I'm just going to X out of this. Alright guys, that pretty much concludes the video. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, remember to give this video a like, comment down below and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Why is it so